Hello boys and girls, welcome back to Lorenzo's space program where we'll be planting flags. Here we are in the tracking station, and as we can see here, we're selecting flags. We have the great success #1 flag. It's here on Kerbin, and it was originally placed by our Kerbinaut Madlorf. Second flag, which we've planted in the last episode, is on Minmus. Here it is, planted by Adbas Kerbin on day 5 of year 1 of our space program. As you may recall, we left, and if we move to ships here, we left our Adbas Kerbin, our intrepid flag planter, we left him in orbit of Minmus. We are going to return to his ship now and see if he can make his way to the moon, where he has a second flag which needs planting. Adbas is feeling very confident at the moment, and he is currently relaxing in his capsule, drinking a beer. Or that might have been me, I don't know for sure. Right, so where we are now is in orbit around Minmus. 277 kilometers periapsis, 377 kilometers apoapsis. Neat and tidy, nothing special going on. So, now we're going to have to rendezvous with the moon. We're going to set it as a target, and our orbit is not even close to intersecting it. This is why there's no markers here, no ascending or descending nodes. We are the moon is in orbit around Kerbin, I'm in orbit around Minmus. Completely different, very hard, if not impossible, to plot a rendezvous from here. So first things first, we're going to escape from Minmus and get back into orbit around Kerbin. Now we want to get into a lower orbit that Minmus is in, so we're going to leave in the retrograde direction. Minmus is orbiting this way, so we want to eject this way. Relative to Kerbin, we'll still be going that way, counterclockwise, but relative to Minmus, we'll be leaving in the other direction. As you can see, our orbital speed here relative to Minmus is 73 meters per second. Relative to Kerbin, it will be more. Actually, no, you can't tell that from here. We are currently descending, so we are almost in the right spot to, we're just going to point prograde and depart Minmus. This is not the best way to do it. It's better to burn on the other side of the planet, but as in the other video, Minmus is very small, so it's easy to brute force orbital changes and stuff like this. We are currently here. We are going to be burning in this direction, and as we can see with a planned maneuver, what is going to happen is we will end up back in orbit around Kerbin. Now, this is only 150 meters per second. We can do it with a lot less, and we can even, because this is the beauty of this system, it will even guess approaches for us with the moon. So this might, in fact, already be decent enough. We're going to, this is 7,000 kilometers. That should work. No. There we go. Everything I said about it being very hard to plot intercepts from here to the moon, forget it, please, because just by dragging basically at random, I made a 80 meters per second intercept course to the moon, which is just amazing, if you do ask me. Adbas Kerbin, with his beer in his hand, is doing a fantastic job at being a rocket scientist and space pilot. So as before, I'm going to point the ship in the direction of the burn. This is indicated on the nav ball by the blue marker. It's not in vision yet, but we're looking for it by turning the ship around. Then I'm going to fast forward time to it and see if we can land on the moon. Landing on the moon will depend on one thing and one thing only. Have I brought enough fuel to descend safely? If not, Adbas is going to crash. The second question is, have I brought enough fuel to then get back to Kerbin? If not, he might stay on the moon. If yes, he will safely go home. Right, so I found the marker. This is the direction we're going to have to burn in, but not quite yet. Not for 15 more minutes. So I'm going to accelerate time to that point and then do it. So it's 10 more minutes. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, there we go. About good. So we're going to wait those 38 last seconds. What I found out in between making these videos is that Kerbal Space Program 0.21, the next update, is now in experimental testing. This means that it will sooner rather than later be released for the rest of us. And what it will have a career mode. Basically there will be scripted missions instead of a sandbox like this in which I'm trying to make my own missions. So what I'm definitely going to do when this update gets released is I'm going to play the career and make videos of it, of course. The first playthrough of every I'll just be videotaping my first playthrough of the career. No need to use fancy words, and that will be awesome. I'm looking forward to that a lot. For now, doing the rocket burn. Ooh, there we go, stop it. What I'm going to do now is to disable this lander engine. Shut it down, because it's less efficient than these other three. These three are small. They've got 319. This is 0. Activate the engine. I don't know. The smaller engines anyway are more efficient than the big engine. So for in-space maneuvering, where where thrust isn't that big a deal, we're going to use the outer engines only. And then when we're coming in for a landing, we are going to use the big lander engine. Isn't that quaint? These fuel tanks are now empty. The fuel is in here, and hopefully after landing we will have enough fuel left to refuel this so it can fly back home to Kerbin. We'll see about that in a bit. Looking at our new trajectory, we are indeed going to intercept the moon. So we see our closest approach to the moon will be 1800 kilometers. We are going to modify it, but not quite yet. First we're going to accelerate time until we're halfway there. Then we'll see about doing a course correction so we can get it a bit closer here. The perspective changes, so now the trajectory is drawn relative to Kerbin, and we see after this moon trajectory, after this moon intercept, we will end up in the pink trajectory. As you can see, the ship that we used to land on Minmus is remaining with Minmus, and it will do so until someone shows up to take it away. This is not in our flight schedule, so as far as we're concerned, it's going to stay there forever. Right, now as to the course correction. First I'm going to take down the time acceleration, add here a node for a planned maneuver, and see if we can, by just gently tweaking these things, make the periapsis of this encounter closer to what it would be otherwise. So this matters a little bit. I have trouble seeing what's going on here. That's a 250 kilometer moon periapsis, which will then break us, because this is a complicated scheme. The solid lines are what's going to happen if we don't do the maneuver. The blue line is our current trajectory. The yellow line is the trajectory of our target, the moon. The pink line is the trajectory of our our trajectory after intercepting the moon, after the encounter. The dotted yellow line is the planned trajectory after the hypothetical burn of 24 meters per second. The dotted white line, the dotted yellow-green line, is our trajectory after the hypothetical encounter with the moon would have taken place. This initial burn is only for 24 meters per second, but look at the difference at this pink trajectory and this dotted green one. This is how making course corrections well in advance of your target can make a huge difference. Because they make such a huge difference, precision is very important. So this burn we're going to execute very precisely. And where I put the hypothetical node, it's 55 minutes away from here. So I'm going to do the same thing again, finding the blue marker on the nav ball and then accelerating time. In the meantime, I'm going to drink my beer, as Adbaz does the same. There is the blue marker. I'm going to just gently stop the ship, and you see that we're out in space. There's nothing even close to here. There's the sun in the distance. See if we can find, there's Kerbin and the moon. We're going there. That's our target. So throwing in a quick save and accelerating time until we are at that 55-minute mark. 3, 2, 1. Stop it. 4 minutes left. 3 minutes. 2, 1. Right, so 24.1 meters per second of velocity change. Here we go. See, only the 3 small engines are firing now, so they're very efficiently nudging the rocket. And we have a 0.3 meters per second residual. Let's delete the hypothetical one, and our closest approach to the moon will now be 250 kilometers, which is great. This is something we can work with. So we're going to accelerate time until we are at that point approximately. I think we might just do okay with the fuel for landing. It's always hard to say though. So there is the moon, and it is coming towards us while we're going towards it. But look at that, intercepting it. at 1,000 times accelerated time, because otherwise it would take us a while. So, slowing down the time acceleration, you can see this moon is quite a lot larger than Minmus, so we're going to have to do proper space flight. Look, here is the lowest point, and on this we're going to plan our maneuver, reducing speed so that we get into a lunar orbit. We want it to be a low orbit because we intend to land. So we're going to reduce the altitude here fairly low. We're going to reduce it to 16 kilometers, no more. 9 kilometers. We're going to be landing on the lit side so we can use our shadows and see where we're going generally. And the plan is we're going to go very low over the lunar surface at orbital velocities, and then immediately go full throttle in reverse and then come to a stop almost immediately above the surface. This is the most energy efficient way to do it, which will save us the most fuel, but it's also risky because if you're braking and you cannot stop quickly enough, you will just slam into the surface at a very high speed. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere, so which means that you can do this. You cannot do this on Earth or Kerbin because the atmosphere would burn you up, but you also cannot use the atmosphere for braking because it's not there. Any parachutes on the moon would not deploy, wouldn't do anything. So you have to slow down completely using rockets. This suicide burn, well no, that's basically called a suicide burn, where you approach at full speed and then brake at the last second. So you don't spend any time fighting the gravity, hoovering up, reducing your speed, then falling down again, reducing your speed again, falling down again, reducing your speed again. That's very inefficient, but it's very safe. We don't have a lot of fuel to waste doing that, so we're going to go for the efficient but highly dangerous method, hence the name suicide burn. First though, we have to establish orbit. And whereas we have to change our velocity by 350 meters per second, which is a fair amount more than it was at Minmus, where it was only about 50, I believe. So the 3 efficient engines are puttering away, braking us into a lunar orbit. If we look at the map, we can see our trajectory is changing. It's curving around to the moon, which will eventually turn into an orbit. We're halfway there. Our fuel is doing great because these are efficient and they don't use a lot of fuel. So we've got 100 more meters per second to burn, and then we're definitely committed to a lunar orbit. From here it would be very low cost to transfer back home, to go back to Kerbin, just dump everything and float down on parachutes, which is also why the Kerbin return stage is very small. It's only this bit, because once we get to there, we can just float down on a parachute. We don't need any fancy landing gear or anything like that. So let's see how this burn turned out. And our lowest point is going to be 12 kilometers, a little bit more than the planned 9, but that's what you get for just kind of eyeballing it. Throwing in a quick save, and we're going to fast forward to the lowest point where I'll be attempting the landing. So where's the moon? Did I lose it? There it is. Currently it's hard to see because it's against a black background and the sun is behind it, but we're going to come around and we will be landing in the daylight, in the sunlight at any rate. Does it count as a day on the moon? Yeah, sure, it's a moon day. For now I'm going to re-engage this engine. If I can, I cannot do it while time warping. Look, we're getting very close to the surface. I need to turn off the time warp, activate this engine. Ooh, it's got more fuel even, that's good. That's very good. I'm going to in fact shut it down and drain do as much as possible with the efficient engines. We're at 27 kilometers. Recall that we are going to reach 12 at our lowest point. So at that lowest point I'm just going to pile on the rocket thrust and slow this down. We'll be going at about 600 meters per second, so as soon as we scrub that, we will be falling almost straight down. And then we want to wait as long as possible to actually slow down, because as I said, we don't want to waste fuel hovering. Adbas getting a little bit nervous, looking out through the window. But everything is fine. Look at that. Any one of these black squiggles on the landscape is going to be our landing spot, although it's probably over the horizon still. Well in the daylight. And we're at 22 kilometers now. I think we'll have enough fuel to do it, but it's I'll have to do an efficient landing. And if all goes well, we'll have a flag on the moon at the end of this episode. That would be something. That would surely be something. I hope the career mode is going to be awesome, because then I can make videos of that and make the missions and make a proper space program. That's what this game really needs, is a career mode where you can salvage the ship. You can't just make anything, can get research on parts, reclaim money. Oh, that's going to be great. Perhaps there will even be resource mining. That would be good. That would definitely be good. So, 13 kilometers, that's near enough. I'm going to light the engines. And we are going to be reducing speed, and from now on we're in a collision course. If something were to happen with the rockets, with Atbaz, he would not stay in orbit, we would be falling down. And I'm going to change the speed indicator to a surface indicator, because as I explained in the previous episode, we want to account for the moon's rotation in our speed. These 3 engines are almost halfway through their tank. But I have the big engine with the big tank in reserve, so that should do it. Over halfway there to reducing our speed. If we zero out the speed here, you can imagine we'll just be stationary in the air, above the surface. There is no air, of course, and then we will begin to be pulled down to the surface of the moon. I was talking about doing this maneuver fairly low. 12 kilometers is still actually fairly high. You can do it at 1 kilometer, then it's imperative you have a very powerful engine. We don't have that, so we're doing a little bit of a cross between a safe margin for error and an efficient, fuel-efficient descent trajectory. We're about stationary now, so I'm going to cut the engine. Next burn, we will have our lander engine in there as well, because now we are going to wait as long as possible before doing a burn. Throwing in a quick save, should something go horribly wrong, we can load it. And a bit horribly wrong, I mean of course a crash in the recording software or something like that, because if the rocket crashes, it crashes and the moon does not get a flag today. Atbaz, he is, after visiting Minmus and now almost on the moon, he is very, very anxious to get home to Kerbin. Can we see it from here? No, we are on the dark side as seen from Kerbin. This is interesting because even in our culture on Earth we often talk of the dark side of the moon, and you might presume that there is a side to the moon that's dark always, which is not true. There is a side we never see from the Earth, and we call it the dark side of the moon, but all sides of the moon get sunlight, and this is a perfect example. The moon rotates around the Earth, it also rotates on its own axis, so every bit gets sunlight, much as we do on Earth. The days are a lot longer on the moon, but every bit gets sunlight. But because it's tightly locked to the Earth, we only see one bit of it, and that bit of course sometimes is illuminated, sometimes is dark. The bit we never see we call the dark side, but it's not dark, so as it is now it's quite light. We are now on the dark side of the moon in that misconception. So, 5 kilometers in volume, we're going at 150 meters per second, which is fairly quickly, as you can see. Terrain is rapidly growing larger, so it's time to fire the engines and slow down. You can see the big rocket plume for the big engine, and we're now at 40 meters per second, which is a lot more reasonable. This is quite a bit taller rocket than we used on the Minmus landing, so it's very, very important that we land with no horizontal velocity whatsoever, because then the rocket will just topple and fall over. Slowing down to 30 meters per second. I'm watching for the shadow on the ground, because that will be a good indicator that we're almost there. And again, the altitude meter, it's at 1800 meters now, is not always a good indicator, because this plateau might be raised above the absolute zero line. In fact, we're almost on the ground. You can tell from the rather quick motion. We are at 9 meters per second, and we're going to land at a plateau of about 1500 meters above sea level, equivalent sea level. I'm going to try zeroing out the horizontal velocity and get this to a smooth landing. There's the shadow. There's the shadow. A little bit more throttle, make it a soft landing. We're actually going up again, and please don't fall over, don't fall over, don't fall over. And the third bit is down. We have landed on the moon, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting tidbit, in the actual moon lander, the backwash from the engines could be dangerous and destroy it. So these landing struts, they had metal metal wires dangling down, and as soon as they hit the ground, the astronauts knew they were only inches above it and they could cut their engines and fall the last bit. So now you know that. We're going to shut down the engines just to be safe, so if I push a wrong button we will not fly off into space again. And then Ed Bass is going to plant his flag. Oh yeah. You see he has quite a ways to climb. Ooh, look at that. I pressed the shift throttle up, fortunately nothing happened. Ed Bass is going on an EVA and he's fairly high up and he's going to climb his ladder down. And you see there is no further ladder down. Fortunately, that does not really matter on the moon because he has a jetpack, and on the moon the jetpack is still sufficient. Ooh, look, he fell over. The jetpack is still sufficient to fly. Look, there he is. Can he run on the moon? No, he cannot run on the moon. If we jump and use the jetpack, we can fly up. You can see everything sticks to the ground a fair bit more than it did on Minmus, and the moon is of course a huge amount larger. So we're going to go for a little jetpack assisted walk and plant our flag. Now we're going to brake, and of course because there's no atmosphere, everything is based on rocket thrust. So here we are a ways away from the rocket, and he is going to plant the flag. What shall we call this? Secondary successes. It's a black flag. That's a bit ominous. We'll call it ominous landing. Black flags are people too. That's a good inscription. There we go. I'm not sure why it's a black flag. Oh, it was just the back of the flag. Right. Well, the inscription will read black flags are people too, because the back of this flag is feeling very, very, very inferior to the front indeed. Here he is. Oh, he's looking ecstatic. He's very happy he did this. And maybe he's very happy just because he gets to go home now, because that's what's going to happen next. He's going to jetpack his way back through the rocket. Careful not to smack into it too fast, because that would topple it. And if you topple your rocket, you are not going home today. That's what they teach you in astronaut school. At least I hope it's what they teach you in astronaut school, because what the hell else are these people doing? Grabbing onto the ladder, and now we have a few important things to do. Board the rocket, and as you may recall, we are going to be using the upper stage to get out of here. It is currently empty of fuel, so we are going to fill it with fuel. First we are going to drain this one. The fuel was in the lower tanks to provide a better center of gravity. If it is heavier down low, it's not as easy to topple the ship over. As you saw in the landing, it was balancing a little bit, and if the fuel was all up there, it might have toppled. Also, had I miscalculated the amount of fuel required, then he would at least still be able to land, and he might not have enough left to get back up again, but he would be alive on the surface. So we do care for our Kerbinauts. So let me just quickly sort this fuel transfer, and I think we might have some fuel remaining in this lander stage, and then we can use that to blast off a little bit, or we can just leave it next to the flag. Although I'm not sure there will be a lot. Yes, this will just about fill it. Yes, we have a whole full fuel tank left. And we have 1.5 fuel tanks here. No, we are going to leave it. We are going to leave it as a reminder that next to this flag... Where's the flag? It's too close for a marker. Good. Right, so all these engines are offline. I'm going to throttle up. And then we're going to leave this... No, first... We're not going to make the mistake again. We're going to check in which direction we have to lift off. Well, look at that. We can lift off almost straight up, because if we do so, we'll be leaving in this direction, which will be retrograde to the moon's direction of travel, which will put us in a trajectory nicely towards Kerbin. So we're going to go straight up for a while. Bye bye moon. It was great stepping on you for 5 minutes. The engine isn't working. Why is the engine not working? Activate the engine. Decouple. We're doing everything manually today. I don't know why, but at least we're off. Boom. And this engine is very powerful. We're pulling 4-5 Gs. And there's the marker from the ominous landing flag. The black flags are flags too. Cutting the engine and seeing what our trajectory is doing. It's not quite escaping the moon yet, but let's burn up for a bit more. Let's take it up to 700 meters per second, I think is a good amount. You can see a low amount of fuel with a ship as small as this. A low amount of fuel will get you a lot of delta V. Because we're not carrying around landing gear, spare fuel, nothing. Just a pair of parachutes to get us down safely on Kerbin. And we are still not going to escape the moon. So we're going to add another bunch of delta V's up to 800 meters per second. Look, here we are. Our new lowest point on Kerbin is going to be 700 kilometers. This is a good start. We will escape the moon's influence and then fine-tune the trajectory so that we may intersect the atmosphere and come to a stop. Our landing site on the moon here was fortuitous, so that we could just basically lift off straight up and go into a somewhat decent return trajectory. Usually you want to establish orbit first and make sure you leave in the retrograde direction. If you leave in the prograde direction or anywhere else, you're going to end up in a very high orbit around Kerbin, which will cost you extra fuel to get home. You want to be immediately from the first time you turn on your rocket, you want to be scrubbing orbital speed, which is altitude as well, so you go home. And not you can escape from the moon and then find yourself in a very high orbit. This is very inefficient. You want to go in the right direction at once. And today our landing site was just by accident perfect for that. So we're going to accelerate time until we are away from the moon, and then we are going to alter our trajectory so that we may come back to Kerbin. What we need to do now is very easy. We just need to reduce our periapsis to under 70 kilometers, which will effectively make us go in the atmosphere, which will then complete the descent for us by slowing us down by aerodynamic drag. So we're going to go for, ooh, this is very low, this is even intersecting the ground. Of course our trajectory will eventually intersect the ground, but if you make it too low, the descent angle will be very steep, and that will turn your day into a bad day. What I did was put it on the wrong side, so I'm going to have to put this ahead of me. Now it's only in 15 minutes, and I'm going to need scratch that, let me please learn how to speak. You can see here the planned maneuver that will take us down to 10 kilometers, well inside the atmosphere. Here it takes 66 meters per second. This is a very low amount of delta V. If you were to do it here and try to get into the atmosphere, you would need hundreds, if not thousands of meters per second of delta V. So you always want to change your trajectory when your speed is lowest. That way your rocket will always impart the same amount of speed on the rocket. But if your relative speed to a celestial body or to a different ship is already low, proportionally it will be a very large change. Whereas if you're going very fast, which always corresponds to being low, the proportionate change of your burn will be low. So you will need to impart a much higher impulse. There is math behind this, but I'm not going to explain you that because I do not grasp the details of it. So time warping to the node, the hypothetical maneuver, and then we're going to do it and see how happy Edbas will be to come home. Right. You are noticing I'm not doing it very precisely because it really doesn't matter so much. We just need to get into the atmosphere. Today I'm not going to bother with landing him close to the space center. This is something else entirely, quite difficult, or at least you have to account for it. It's rather tricky. Now we're just going to assume that there is recovery vehicles, planes, aircraft carriers and helicopters waiting for our intrepid flag planter wherever he lands. We have no idea at the time. So we're going to be back at Kerbin in about 7.5 hours. We can handily accelerate the time and see that planet coming up very quickly indeed. We are going to accelerate time a little bit less, so we can still enjoy the scenery a little bit. It looks like we will be landing at night, so there will not be a whole lot of visibility, but there might be a little bit of visibility due to our fiery re-entry. We are going at almost 3 kilometers a second, as you can see here, which is a lot more than the 200 meters per second we were going up there. This is what I meant with the relative speed here is a lot higher. I can just burn my engine basically any direction. This has already done more than the course correction there. It basically made no difference to the trajectory. None at all. So we're still plummeting into the atmosphere, and because our relative speed here is so high, you need a lot of rocket power to change it. This is why we changed it while we were up very high over there. And here is the moon, which now has a flag. Oh, this is Minmus, which now has a flag, and this here is the moon, which also has a flag. Kerbin already had a flag from our previously failed mission. This means that the Kerbin system is now effectively conquered. It is flagged everywhere. The moon, Minmus, and Kerbin belong to us. We're really going to hit the atmosphere. We're going at over 3 kilometers a second now, almost 3,300 meters per second, and we have now officially hit the atmosphere. You can see it's brightening up a little bit. This is because the game also simulates how the sun's rays are scattered through the atmosphere. The sun is on the other side of the planet, but because there is an atmosphere that distributes the light a bit, it is lighter than it would be in deep space. It's fairly cool if you ask me. So we are plummeting quite rapidly. We are heading towards our lowest point of 10 to 20 kilometers, and as you can see, this atmospheric gauge is slowly filling up again. We are going to hit the deeper parts of the atmosphere. We're going to try to put the nose of the rocket in the direction of travel, so it doesn't look quite as uncontrolled as it otherwise might. Look there, oh, this is looking very bad. Here is the re-entry heat because we're slamming into the thicker parts of the atmosphere at over 3 kilometers a second. Adbas is looking very worried indeed. And any semblance of control is lost. We're just tumbling through the atmosphere like a fireball. And fortunately the materials of the rockets here are very sturdy, and everything is heat proof. This is really good. This is because this is now just only a visual effect. But soon, hopefully in the next update or soon thereafter, this will matter, and a re-entry like this would not do, and it would break you apart handily. We have shed over 1 kilometer per second of speed already. We're at 20 kilometers and 1800 meters per second of speed, and this is of course going to go nowhere but up. As you can imagine, this fiery entry is quite harrowing, and it looks like we'll be landing over a continent, so no aircraft carriers will be needed. They will just need to ring up the local Kazakhstani people who have decided this is Kazakhstan and send over a truck to pick up Adbas, or of course they can abandon him, leave him to fend for himself in the woods for a week, as the Russians sometimes did. The Soviet capsules, they used to land in Kazakhstan and Siberia, just over the Russian mainland. In fact, the Vostok capsule is made to land on ground, not on water as the Apollo ones. But because their land is so huge, they might actually land in the forest, in the woods, and they would carry survival kits with some knives, some guns, a little bit of food, a survival kit. And sometimes they had to wait upwards of 3 to 4 days before anybody came from them. That must have been quite harrowing. Spending first a few days in a very tiny capsule, fearing for your lives obviously, as you're pioneers in space. That's not a very safe occupation. And then after a very rough landing, it was, I'm not sure exactly how fast they would hit the ground, but I think it's about 30 kph, so very like a small car crash. They would hit the ground with that speed, and then they would have to survive in ice cold woods for a good while. So nothing but respect to those space pioneers, both the USA and the American ones, of course. But the Americans had it relatively luxurious in their pickups. They were usually picked up only a few hours after splashing down at a far more gentle speed. Speaking of splashing down, this rocket is going to crash down into the ground if my staging would just work. So there it goes. And I'm going to deploy the parachutes last. Here, of course, the parachutes are not deployed. And we can accelerate time until everything is on the ground. So parachutes have deployed. Yes, we don't care about the time warp. And in just a bit, our intrepid hero Adbas Kerbin is going to go outside. Oh, I wonder if I can, would he? Yes, he's going to see, he's very anxious. He's going to go out of the capsule right now. Look, he's hanging on to do the few stairs there. This is still a 100-meter drop, so we better hold on. And I'm going to try and make him jump off just before the capsule hits the ground. And we'll see. And look, there's the moon where he put his flag. An amazing end to an amazing mission. And next up we might go to Juna, which looks like Mars, and let's jump and oof. Look, he made it. Haha, jumping out of the capsule before he hits the ground. That's got some style there. He's a bit dizzy, and there we go, he's happy again to be home. Welcome home, Adbus, you did a good job. Anyway, you've noticed I've been back to making YouTube videos. I need only 2 more subscribers and my first subscriber present will hit, which is a tour of the island, which I'll be making by taping a camera to my head and driving around or something like that. So if you like this shenanigans, subscribe. I'm going to have more StarCraft videos up as well, more Kerbal Space Program videos, and of course as soon as point 21 hits I'm going to be playing the career mode to see what that's about and if I can manage a space program for real with money and everything. So thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.